I've got the recording going on the phone, but not there. Now it is. And it all started there, had the video going and everything, but just like the other day where I forgot to forget to record. Actually, y'all's class I did record, but I didn't record the morning one that day. Now we got the recording going. So on the OSI versus and the TCP/IP models. So they were both developed. Exact year they were developed in is not something you need to worry about. Okay, I don't remember ever seeing an exact year on either one, and they would have been things that would have been developed over a longer period of time right there. It's not something that they just wrote up overnight or even wrote up in a week. It would have been a process of going through these things, developed and approved. And so the things I have read, basically, that anytime they date them, they get into about 1980. Okay? Which I realize for the group of y'all, I think from all of y'all sitting here, as ancient history for 1980. Okay? So if you're going, okay, it's 1980, 1982, what difference does it make? There are some things you do need to worry about specific years on stuff. But on this, you definitely don't. And these are models. So they were developed at that point. And then we've been working ever since using both models. The two models are similar. There's some differences to them. But as far as the whole flow part to them, they're the same. Okay? TCP/IP will have 4 layers to it, and OSI will have 7 layers. So you're going to have to learn the 4 and 7. And I'm going to compare them to you. I'm sure on the board as I show them to you. So that's where they came from. Okay. Now the idea is, as you're looking at it, is what's the process when something is sent out on the network? What's the process it goes through to get sent across the network? And when it gets received, what's the process it goes through? And going across the network is one of the steps, actually. But once it gets there, what's the process it goes through to where it's then handed back to an application on that end in a format that that application looks at it and recognizes it being what was sent from the other end. So the idea is you're sitting in Chrome. You request a web page. You send off http://dwightwatt.com, and you want that server to get that request, read that request correctly, and then send back to you my web page. And when you get it, that it be in a format that Chrome recognizes it and displays it like it should have been displayed. Or you're on my GNTC here at the college, and you go out there to register. When you send that you want to be put in section and the CRN number of 2796, you want to proceed to send that from your machine, that your student number to be assigned to 2296. When it gets to the server here at GNTC, you want the server, when it gets to it, that this is a request from your student number for course 2296, and when my GNTC looks at it, that it fully recognizes that request exactly from you and proceeds to do what you want to do. Okay? But in the process of getting there, it's going to change things around so that it can get from you sending it at your house or me sending it for you in the office. That when it gets there, having traveled across whichever way on the network, be it just inside the school network or via using the internet to the school network, that the other end recognizes it when it gets handed off to the server. Does everybody follow on that? And that it's in the format and expectation of what either my GNTC expects or what my server expected from the request for my web page. Does everybody follow what we're doing there? So what we're concerned about is all of that down in there of sending and receiving. Okay? Now, to do that, you're going to be sending it, and it's going to translate it in a number of ways, ship it across, it's got to get it into a format, go onto the wire. Then I'm using wire, and I will be for most of the course in a broad term right there. When I say wire, usually it could be a copper wire, it could be fiber optic cable, it could be air for carrying wireless across. Okay? So we follow on that. So whatever type media it's using, okay? That carries across there, and then it all gets figured out where it belongs and gets to the right machine, and it gets all put back together. Because it may have been disassembled in the process. Think about when you need to mail that if you want it to ship something, be it to the post office or UPS or FedEx or whoever, that if you had something you wanted to ship to another location, there's a process you got to go through to get that package sent to them, and then it goes through on its way there. Does everybody follow on that? That if you were going to send a Christmas package last month to your Aunt Susie out in California, okay, and you had bought her something really big, and you were going to ship it from here in Georgia to her in California, the first thing you run into is making sure it's small enough to ship however you're going to ship it. But if you're going to ship it by the Postal Service or by UPS, you're basically limited to, it can't be longer than 70 inches. Okay? I think the number for UPS may be a little bit bigger, but that's the Postal Service number. Okay? But there's a maximum number. Even if you were going to send it by tractor trailer, there's a maximum size it could be of whatever you ship to them out there. It's not going to be able to be more than 53 feet long. Put it in a tractor trailer. Okay? I don't know what it is you decide to ship, but it's big. Okay? It's bigger than one of those requirements. Does everybody follow on that? So the first thing you're going to do is take it apart and ship it in pieces if it's bigger than those numbers. Still ship it, it's just you're going to take it apart and ship it in pieces. Okay? Now, you're going to have to label those pieces so that when Aunt Susie gets it, she knows how to put it back together. Does everybody follow on that one? And so you're going to take it apart, put each of the pieces in its own box, wrap it up. And so you're going to put some wrapping on it. You've broken it apart into smaller pieces, wrap it. It's her Christmas gift, right? So you're going to put a tag on it, right? And just put Aunt Susie on it, right? So when it gets to the correct house, they'll know who Aunt Susie is. It may not be her real name. Her real name may be Eve, but everybody knows her as Susie. But y'all know somebody that fits into that category, right? So you put Aunt Susie on there with your little Christmas tag, or write it on the box if you're cheap and don't like tags. And then what do you do next? You wrap it up again. You're going to put it in brown wrapping paper or something, but you're going to wrap it outside. You're going to address it again. This time probably to her real name. Okay? But it still may be Susie that you may put on there. You're going to put her last name probably on there. And you're going to put on there this time her physical address. You're also going to put on that package most likely a return address on it that says where did it come from. Okay? And you're going to take that down to the post office or the shipping terminal or whatever and mail it. Now, what's going to happen as it gets mailed, no matter which one of these shipping places we use? Is it going to go from wherever you dropped it off to, is it go straight to our post office? No. More than likely, it's going to go to another shipping spot, a regional one or whatever, probably get picked up from there, taken partway across the country, stopped, taken off the truck, sorted again, and put on another truck heading on out. And it may not be the most direct route if you were just driving the line here to there. Okay? She may be in San Diego, but it may go to Chicago, to Portland, and then down to San Diego. Okay? Or even Chicago to Portland, back to Phoenix, and then over to San Diego. Right? All along the way, actually what has happened is the shipping company has packaged it again. Because what are they going to do with it normally? They put it in carts or bins with everything else going to the same place. You go down to the post office, you go to ship something, what's the person behind the counter do with it? They get it from you. They've got one bin sitting back there, usually that's labeled to go to the regional spot where it then gets separated out again. They've got another bin that says it's for local, for them to take back there and just sort out and take deliver it from that post office spot, right? And they may have several more bins, depending on how many connections they've got from. So they have in turn packaged it in them. And to that bin that says, but when it gets to the regional one, it's going to go in a different bin. And one of them's going to be to go to Kansas City, for instance. And then it gets put in the truck with that and shipped. When it gets to Kansas City, they take it out of that bin, sort it out again, looking at it, it's supposed to be going to San Diego, so it doesn't belong here in Kansas City. And whichever one is where they know stuff going to California goes to next, they put it into that. Maybe to Chicago. And the same thing at Portland. Portland looks at it and goes, oh, it's going to California, but we're here real close to California, so we don't just send it into one spot in California, but we send it to the nearest spot it belongs to in California. So they ship it to San Diego. San Diego Regional Center then sends it to the right post office that serves in Susie, and then it gets handed to the postman to go deliver. And they put it in whichever's the correct truck, and they deliver. Now it's got none of that outer wrapping anymore that has kept changing all along the way with just addressing to the next shipping facility. And even if we shipped it by FedEx, it may well have ended up in the post office anyway down there again, because in some cases they're doing shipping now that the shipping companies do it until it gets down to the local link and they hand it off to the post office. So it may go through them anyway. When it gets to the house, the address you put on it was the physical address of where she lives now, right? That's an address that does not change, typically. Okay? From the time the house was built there or whatever, if we go back to it in 30 years, more than likely it's going to have the same house number. It'll still be sitting on the same street. It does change once in a while. We do rename streets once in a while, and they do renumber stuff once in a long time. Okay? That places grow a whole lot and decided to review the whole thing. Or back a few years ago when we went and put in the 911s everywhere, all kinds of addresses changed. The people that had the same address for 50 years suddenly had a new street address. Okay? Otherwise, typically, from the time you build the place, it keeps the same address forever. Okay? So, the postal guy, for one, delivers it. Take it in the house. There's an address to that house, so whoever opens up the package. But maybe you just addressed it to Aunt Susie's family, a family of Mrs. So-and-so. Okay? So anybody opens it up and there sits in there this nice little package. It says Aunt Susie on it. Aunt Susie gets it at that point, and Aunt Susie opens it up. Aunt Susie opens up all the other packages that came in from you that day too. You labeled them and told her this is box 1 or part 1, this is part 2, this is part 3, and sent her somewhere along the way, sent her directions also in one of the boxes. And she puts all the parts back together. It comes out part 1 goes to part 2, and so on. And she has whatever it is back together, and it looks what just like what you started out with when you went to this summer. Is everybody follow on that? Follow the process we went through going down, getting it ready to go, and then when we went to go across, actually, we kept several times. We stopped and did a little bit of disassembling of packaging, figured out it's not where it's supposed to be yet, repackaged that part, shipped it on, did the same thing until it got to Aunt Susie's house, and then we actually went through the full undoing. Think about what we just undid. We undid exactly what we did. When we came down doing here, we went back up undoing on this end, and we ended up with up here are 2 ends, the same time. So Aunt Susie has what you shipped to Aunt Susie. You ready to follow that? That's what the models are going to do for networking. We're going to go through a similar process that we just talked about. And remember where I mentioned about physical addresses. That was actually where you actually live. Okay? That was the actual street on it or whatever. The logical address was to the person in there. And that can change. Okay? The physical one is a pre-stated one, and that's where we kept trying to hold them. Okay? All right, so now, first thing, there is a one sheet of paper in there in module 3 that's a handout sitting there that goes summarizes everything and has basically everything on our radar board plus a little bit more between the models. Okay, so where I'm going to go through and be writing all of this stuff on the board, there's a sheet in there that has all of this stuff already written down there for you. So everybody follow on that. You can go and follow along on that. If you want on your machine, or and actually it's the OSI model, the TCP/IP one. Yeah, TCP/IP one's on there too. I thought it was. So it's the lights here. I want the on-off switch to be there, not over in the middle of the TV. I'll reach for the wrong point. I'm going to go ahead and put it up on the screen, but if you want, you can go back and grab it and put it on your screen if you want. Okay? And then obviously you can take those too, but I'm telling you it's out there so you don't have to write as much on it. I'm not going to write all this stuff down. Okay. Although some of this stuff's not on there. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is not on the OSI model. The OSI stands for Open System Interconnect. Okay, there's an open standard to it. It's not long proprietary to any specific type of networking system. That's why it's open. And it's for connecting systems together. So system and interconnect. Well, you're connecting keeping systems together. Okay, and that's what the interconnect is. So OSI is Open System Interconnect. You need to be aware of that. Okay. Now, the OSI model was developed by ISO. That's the International Standardization Organization. And I just hope you're wrong on that. That's the International Organization. Yeah, okay. The International Organization for Standardization. Okay? That's not in the same order as those letters. ISO is an international group that sets standards out there for all types of stuff. We're going to refer to it later in the course on some other stuff. For instance, when we look at wireless, we're going to see there's wireless standards out there. And for instance, that now if you go out and you get the latest wireless stuff, it's going to be the 802.11ac. Okay? That 802 will be that standard that they developed. Okay? Actually, that's IEEE standard. But they've got standards out there too that OSI uses. Okay? But we're going to see some of them pop up later. You already see out there ISO standards, probably in terms of some places you drive by and stuff. If you've ever looked at some of the manufacturing companies and stuff, you will see on some of them have flags on it, some of them have banners on their building. If you look at some catalogs from some different places, you'll see ISO 9000, right? Sometimes or 9001 or 9002, something in the 9000 series. What that is that's a quality standard. It's done by the same people. And where it says ISO, it's the same ISO. Okay? And that's saying, okay, this company has followed the requirements set by ISO for quality. Basically is they got all of their routines recorded and that they follow what they say about how to build stuff. Okay? And that they have been audited on it and verified that they really do what they say they do. Does that make sense? You'll also see the ISO on if y'all go out and use your dev tools for teaching. Some of the programs that you get, or even some of the programs you go out and find and get, you'll find they send you an ISO file. And it's an extension of the ISO. It's again that ISO. There's a standard been set there about how can you comply. Take a set of files on the computer and get them put onto a CD, and where somebody gets a CD, expands that set of files, and gets back exactly the same thing that was produced in the first place. So when you buy programs and stuff nowadays, a lot of times they give you an ISO file that has to be expanded on your machine. You've got exactly what would have been, used to have been on a CD. Okay? So you'll see ISO in other places. Now, its letters don't match to the name because iOS has some other scientific meaning and they set all scientific standards, etc. Okay? And this is the international. And the US, ANSI does the same thing for US standards, although they're working together. Okay? So if you want to know exactly what is 1 ounce of whatever, ISO has defined what is an ounce. But somebody's got to set the rule of what an ounce is, right? Or else you could come up and say one thing's an ounce. You could say something else is an ounce, and I could come up with something else and I say it's an ounce. That if there's a standard out there for an ounce, then when we say each one of us says we're selling something that's an ounce, he knows when he goes to buy it, whether it be from me, you, or you, that he's going to get the same thing from all three of us, right? Or when you go to buy a gallon of gas, you want to know you're getting that same set amount, whether you buy it at Napco or buy it at Walmart or wherever, that gallon should be a gallon, right? Well, a gallon be defined by somebody. Okay? That's ISO. So they came up with this model. It is ISO as the acronym for it, because IOS, which is what the initials really fall into for a while, has some type of other scientific meaning, and they decided that's commonly used. I can't remember what it is, but that's where they decided, and they were doing a lot of scientific stuff on setting standards for it. They chose not to put the initials in that order to throw more confusion out. Yes, it is your computer field, you're not going to be playing. Okay? For instance, ATM can mean about 3 different things. Okay? TCP/IP is really a development, really coming off of Bell Labs, off of AT&T, because they're the ones that developed Unix, and so they basically developed that model. You really don't have to worry about where that model is. Just know it's TCP/IP. You really don't need to worry about at this point what TCP or IP stands for, other than that's protocols we're going to look at later in the book. Okay, and we'll see specifically that that's 2 major protocols you're going to be aware of, and there's a whole group more often to go about, and there is tons of protocols on there. And so it just picked up the name from there. So that's the 2 vehicles, okay? And without it, network systems, you can talk to network systems, okay? And then with it, everybody developing network systems that they sell you with networking software, they made them work in a similar way, and they can make their protocols and go, okay, this protocol should be doing these things, and talking to other protocols, do the same things, and so we can make them talk to each other. And so it made compatibility much more realistic. Now, y'all all shifted to that side of the room. We got more room on board on this side. This sort of fills up. So let's see where we go from here. So on OSI, there are 7 layers. I'm going to first put the letters for the 7 of them up here, and then we'll talk from there. And hopefully not miss them up. So there are 7 layers on the OSI model. Are going to start with these 7 layers. Okay? They're going to number from the bottom up. This will be the first layer, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. This will be the physical layer. And I'm just going to give you the names in a second for the moment. Then the data link layer. The network layer. The transport layer. The session layer. The presentation layer. And the application. So starting down here and numbering up. Now, you're going to need to know 7 layers in order and be aware they number from the bottom. But if you can remember from the top down, that's fine. Or from the bottom up, just remember, here's the layers and how they done. Okay? But you can have test questions asking you about the 4th layer, talking about the 3rd layer, or whatever. Y'all follow on that? And more than likely, you're going to get questions that ask particularly about layers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? Things that happen on those layers. So those are going to be the layers. Now, a mnemonic that I learned for it, and it has made sense to me for remembering the layers in order, is that I learned programmers do not throw sausage pizza away. So going from the bottom up, and that I've got written on that sheet of paper. Okay. There are others, some that will go from top down. I don't remember what they click in my mind that makes sense. And others that go from bottom up. So if you find a mnemonic that makes sense to you, use one that makes sense to you. Okay? But programmers do not throw sausage pizza away. Made sense to me when I read that one. It was easy for me to remember because programmers historically have been ones that a lot of times work by themselves, hide away in offices. A lot of times in the typical way that people will describe them sometimes will be of programmers not being real social animals, but in a spot, hiding in it, and that people that they may just call out for pizza regularly, and that every few months that you realize their office is stacked deep in pizza boxes with pizza still in them, and that you go, we send a hazmat crew in there to clean out their office. Okay? And it's all off of some true thought. Okay? Because a lot of them do work by themselves. It is that programmers do eat lots of pizza because when they get into working on things and I'll work for late into the night or whatever, and they're liable to just call out for a pizza, or even a group of people, programmers working together are liable to go, let's just call out for pizza right now to keep on working so we don't have to stop what we're doing. They don't want to take a break from it. They're going, we're under trouble what we're doing. Let's just get a pizza and keep going. Okay? You can sort of relate them to like gamers. Gamers and programmers have a certain similarity to them. Okay? And y'all can all relate on a gamer on that and just change it to a programmer and have no trouble with that problem. So gamers that sit in the basement all day long, day and night, and they can tell you when it's day versus it's night. And I've been warned on several students I had along the way, don't let them have my home phone number because they had no idea in the world what time of the day or night it was, and were liable to call you at 4 a.m. thinking it's perfectly normal time to be making phone calls. Okay? So that's the one I learned from. There's others out there. I'm not sure which one the book gives you there. I really haven't read this latest one on it. Exactly on what they got there. It's going to be, they're going to have something probably in their suggestion also. It could be bottom up like that one. There's ones out there for top down. Okay? So for mnemonics to work, they got to have some meaning too, for you to remember what it was. Okay? So y'all can see why that one caught on for me. So we've got 7 layers here. There's different things are going to occur on each layer. On a number of layers will be the layer. I realized I never put paper up there because this is again, first off, there's a form. I'm going to move it over there. I guess we'll move it up too so y'all can read that last line, although I'm going to tell you what that is anyway. Well, I'm going to, but doesn't happen. All right. Wait a minute. What's the first part off this? Oh, there it is. It's in the middle. I was thinking this column should have been over here. Why it's not? It's not in order it should be in. That's weird. And I'm the one that made the sheet up. All right. So if we look at the physical layer is concerned with how are we going to be sending this information actually being sent. So it's actually when it's out there on whatever media is going across. So it's putting it on that media. It's actually physically putting it onto the media and then it being going across the media. Okay? So that's with the physical layer. So devices that you're going to work with on this layer, as I've got up there, I've got hubs, transceivers, and repeaters. Repeaters probably is the big one that you would use today. Another one that could be there, but I didn't put it on layer 1, but it's a lot of times seen on being on layer 1 and layer 2 are NICs. Hubs would be there too, but we're going to talk later in the course about hubs are obsolete. Okay, you don't want to be using hubs. Hubs just connect all your devices together and no intelligence involved in it. Switches do the same thing with intelligence. So you really want to use switches. So hubs basically died in the early 2000s. Okay, when the price of switches came down. All of these things are just physically connecting devices together, no intelligence in them. It's just a physical connections. So everybody follow on that? The NIC is a network face card. On your computers, it used to be where it was physically a separate card that plugged into your machine that you connected to the network to. Nowadays, it's normally built into your computing device, but it's still a NIC, okay? That's just it's made into the motherboard. Everybody follow on that? So that's what that is. And that is just how are you actually connecting this computer to the wire. And again, wire there being a broad term, could be copper wire, it could be fiber optic, it could be air or wireless. Okay? So that's all going to occur there. We're also going to find that we're working with bits on that way. When we send the stuff across, we're going to send it bit by bit by bit as we send it out. That's all that occurs down here. It doesn't know anything else about it down here. It doesn't know how it groups together in any way. So you're following that? It's just concerned, well, send a bit, send a bit, send a bit, or send a group of bits, but they have no meaning beyond that. Okay? So you're working with bits. The data link layer, first off, is a unique layer, and I don't have it mentioned up here on it, but the layer has two sublayers. It's the only layer that gets split into sublayers. Okay? But on the data link layer, we're actually sending it to spots that then resend it out. Okay, and that will get it intelligently within your network normal. Okay, it's sort of like when we ship that package to the post office, that the data link layer was just getting concerned with about how we were doing post office or getting to focused on this. Okay? Not about the whole thing. I'll follow on that. On the data link layer, as far as the data is concerned, we're going to work with frames. That's important for you to remember. Frames are going to be the data where it's got on the outer case of it, it's encapsulated the data, actually another encapsulation unit, but it's ended up with where you've got the data's been encapsulated in there, and you've got this layer, the MAC address is on it. The MAC address is an address on anything that connects to networks. When it's made, a MAC address is burned into it. It's a 32-bit address. You'll see it on devices labeled on there as a MAC address. It's basically a serial number. That's 32 bits long. And the data is, I said 32 bits wrong, but it's totally wrong. It's 128 bits long. It's 32 hexadecimal characters. Okay? But it's made up of hexadecimal characters. That's 32. Okay? Hexadecimal numbers include letters. So you'll see on your MAC address that's got numbers and letters A through F, which we'll talk about later in the book about hexadecimal numbers. Okay? They'll be there as numbers, dash, two numbers, a dash, two numbers, a dash, up to 32 characters. Okay? Normally in that way, although it could be just one solid number. Usually they split it in dashes between every two characters. Okay? It is a number that is put in there at time of manufacture, burned into the device, into the NIC or into whatever it is burned in. So it's always, that device always has that number. First half of that number, I told you, it's actually 12 hexadecimal characters long. It's totally wrong. So it's 12 hexadecimal characters long. First 6 of them tells you who the manufacturer is. The last 6 tells you is a serial number within that manufacturer on it. Okay? So the MAC address is unique to the device. Doesn't tell us anything about where the device is located in the world. That everything has a unique one. Does that make sense? Sort of like your name. If I have your name, and I have your complete name on it, or if I have your social security number, I've pretty much got a unique identifier about you, right? If I take it together, it should. Okay? The MAC address is going to be similar to like your social security number. Okay? It doesn't tell me, though, where you are located in the world. Where you live, I know what your street name and city address is. I know where you live, right? Now, that can keep changing, but your name basically stays the same, or your social security number stays the same. Does that make sense? Once you get a social security number, you're basically, that's your social security number for the rest of your life. Okay. So, MAC address is on here. Devices used on this here, NICs will appear again because NICs, and probably see them more often listed on 2, but you'll see lots of places listed on as 1 and 2, I find. Okay? Because it is physically putting it out there onto the network, but it's also doing the last little bit most of the time of getting it out there. So that's where that one gets a little mixed up. Switches will be on this layer. That should be, okay, and bridges is another one, but you're probably not going to see too many bridges. Bridges are like switches, but just connect two segments together. Switches connect a whole bunch of segments together. Okay? Normally today, you're going to see switches, but not really see bridges. The repeater down here, all it does is where, for instance, y'all get an access point extender. All it does, it doesn't do any looking at what's coming through it. It's just rebroadcasting it out. That's a repeater. If you're needing to send the signal down the wire further than we're allowed to send it, there's only so far you can send the signal. You need a repeater at that spot on the line to just pick up that signal and resend it out at full strength. You follow on that? So there's no intelligence on this layer. Okay? It's just literally putting it up on the wire, getting it off the wire. The network layer is the next one. And probably in the course of all the things, places we're going to spend the most time on, is going to be on the network layer. Just for your information. We're going to talk most about that layer. The network layer is going to work with packets. And I'm just going to come back and talk about these in a minute, separately once we get to the top. You guys, it'll be easier to talk about them from top down instead of trying to talk about this real one. It uses IP addresses, which is the address you assign to the machine that tells you where it is on your network. It tells you what network it's on and a number assigned to it specifically on that network. So that tells you what network is it on in the world. The IP addresses on IP version 4, which is what you see the most often out there still today. We're moving to IP version 6, but we're still heavily IP version 4 out. Okay? We're having to move to 6, but we're still not. We're much further along now than we were a couple of years ago. And IP version 6 has been around since like 99. Okay. With IP version 4, that's where you have addresses that look like 192.168.8.1. They're 4 numbers long, separated by periods. And each of the numbers can range from 0 to 255. Examples you're going to always see, that you're going to quite often see in books, and when I go to give you examples, is I'm going to start with 192.168. Real ones start with other type numbers, and we'll talk about those when we get somewhere, probably like module 10 or something. Okay, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about IP addresses. IP version 6, and for some reason, the number of IP addresses in IP version 4 has gone out of my head at the moment, but it's like only a billion or something, 310 billion or something. I can't remember what number it is right now. Okay, there's a limit on them, and we've exceeded. We've pushed that number. Back in '99, we also pushed that number and ran out of addresses. And we ran out of addresses like a year and a half ago. Okay. However, there's still addresses floating out there, but the way they had were given out, they ran out of addresses, and really the biggest number of authority. They may have a few addresses right now, but they keep running out, and they get some back and then they lose. But there's enough out there with different ISPs that haven't used all their addresses that we've kept on going. Okay, but we're sitting right there on we're out. Okay, back in '99 we did the same thing. Well, back in '99, every device in the world had its own IP address, and so this machine would be clearly identifiable outside of school to you at home, and that you could actually send messages back and forth straight from any machine in the world to any other machine in the world prior to that. Okay? However, we didn't have enough addresses at that point anymore. Because when they created IP version 4, which was also back about 1980, the number of addresses they put in there, they were going, we've got more addresses than we'll ever need in the world to use. But they had no idea World Wide Web was coming along, or all of the other devices we had figured out to put the internet onto today and use connecting to the internet. They figured at worst back then was that a number of people would get a computer at home and have a computer at work. But still, most people wouldn't. Okay? Now it is each one of us has several computing devices that connect to the internet. Because probably every one of us in the room in here has got a telephone on us that connects to the internet. Even if you got a flip phone. Those flip phones connect too. Because they let you do some, it's just you go crazy trying to punch buttons several times trying to get each of us on. And that they're a little bit better protected devices. But they're really useful to some people. Okay? My brother does garden work. And his comment is he's got to have a flip phone because he drops it sometimes and stuff, cutting grass and everything. If he had a real phone, it would never hold up very long for him. He'd be 12. Flip phone will hold up for him. So he still is on a flip phone. But he can sit there and text on it, etc. And see some other stuff. Limited on what he can do, but it's all he needs. You've got a computer sitting at home. At least one. A bunch of y'all probably got 2 or more computers sitting at home. Because you may have a laptop and a desktop, or a couple of laptops, or you got an iPod and an iPad and a laptop, or an iPad and a desktop sitting there. Your TV may be connected to the internet. You may have some devices in the house connected to it. You may have a Ring doorbell, which is on the internet. Your thermostat may be on the internet. Your refrigerator may be connected to the internet, etc. If we go look at fancier places on their irrigation, all their sprinkler heads may be on the internet. When you drive by the farmers irrigating their fields, that's on the internet in a lot of cases, so that if it didn't water yesterday, when it was, not yesterday, but the day before, when it rained, that if it rained, there's no reason to be watering that day. Likewise for the sprinkler on the golf course or in your front yard. Because how often have you driven by sprinklers going in the pouring down rain and going, isn't that stupid? Okay? But you've got it connected to the internet as an IoT device. Guess what? You don't do that anymore. And if it rained that morning, the IoT device knows it rained that morning and went, we got a third of an inch of rain this morning, so we don't need to run sprinklers for the next 2 days because they've got enough water for the next 2 days to keep the grass and bushes growing. Right? So look at all of those places we're using IP addresses now. They had no concept of that back in 1980. That was science fiction when they thought about that. And that was going to be a long, long, long time in the future. That's not that long ago. Okay? Agreed, that was 40 years ago now. But when they ran out of problems was in less than 20 years. Because when the World Wide Web appeared, everything changed. Because now everybody was going to have a computer at home. Everybody needed a computer on their desk connected to the internet. School, every classroom needed computers in it. Instead of just being one computer lab or 2 computer labs in the whole school. So they came up with IP version 6. There back in 99 or so. It was actually developed at that point. IP version 5 they were working on and went, whoa, we got to have a ton of addresses at it too, not just quality improvements. So throughout what they were doing, it started all over again to add in addresses. Now you've got 32 character long addresses for IP version 6, which gives you like 310 unidillion addresses. Okay? Not being there in 98, 99, whenever, but that'll be way more addresses than we'll ever possibly need. But remember, they said the same thing in 1980. Okay? So far, it's not. But we're doing a lot more things to make the picture then, and we're doing things again that was pictured way off in the future. We're getting ready to do massive space exploration, which is going to even explode further. With IP version 6, the story is that supposedly we could give every grain of sand in the world its own IP address. I don't know if that's really true or not. That's what I've read in a number of places. Okay? We're no threat on running out of IP addresses at this point. Okay? We are changing to IP version 6 at this point in time. However, IP version 4, I fully expect to be around at least 10 more years. Okay? Back in 99, everything said IP version 4 is going to be gone within a year or two. IP version 4 is still the dominant way to do it today. However, anything you get today from networking device of any type is going to be able to work with IP version 4 and IP version 6. A lot of stuff is now giving you both addresses. Okay? And the IP version 6 address usually actually works off of the MAC address. Which is part of it. So we are moving towards IP version 6, but we're nowhere near it. Most ISPs, when they issue an IP address for you at home or your business or whatever, will give you both an IP version 4 and version 6. Some don't. Some of the smaller ones are still just giving out 4s. So we're running in a dual world today. We'll gradually move to the point where IP version 4 will get discontinued. But again, my thought at this point is it's probably at least 10 years off. It could be 20. Okay? That's pretty much a career for y'all anyway. But I remember being told back in 99 when I was teaching stuff, IP version 4 is going to be gone within 3 years. I'm still teaching IP version 4 because that's where we live on it still today, 20 years later. So you can't always depend on predictions. So this layer, the network layer, does use IP. I've got IPX up there also, although today you're not going to use IPX. That's no veil, and that was the leading network provider software back in its time. It's as far as using their protocols, that's dead. Okay. And that this is where you're connecting the devices, the networks together. So you're going to use routers on this way. IP addresses are logical addresses. MAC addresses are physical addresses. So routers are used to connect network to network. Okay? It's really not, a router is not what you connect your PC to. You connect your PC to a switch, which connects to a router, which then connects to another network. Now, you've got devices out there, for instance, your DSL or cable modem. Most of the time, those are actually routers and switches combined. And you'll actually notice that there's a separate little port for plugging the internet line into versus where the ports are for you to plug your regular PCs into. That's because the ones where you plug the PCs into are actually a switch where you plug the crossed over to that other network. So it's a router and a switch. So everybody follow on that? And we'll talk about those later on. So in that case, it's actually a device that sits there and runs on layer 2 and layer 3. Layer 2 and layer 3. Okay? All right. The next layer is the transport layer. The transport layer segments the data. So we're going to have segments on it. Protocols that we're going to run into there is TCP and UDP. And we'll talk about those when we get to the where of that, what they specifically do. Okay? But just be aware those are there. The TCP/IP model uses the TCP/IP model, uses that protocols, which actually is hundreds of protocols. TCP and IP just happen to be 2 of them. SPX is mentioned here, but you're not going to see that mentioned anymore. That's left over from Novell's system, and I developed this handout years ago. So I'm still going to leave it on there in any event, just for you to be aware of. It's just Novell's version of TCP. IPX was Novell's version of IP. If you see a protocol end in the letter X, it probably belongs to Novell. If you see one end in the word talk, it belongs to Apple. Apple puts talk on the back of a lot of their protocols that are proprietary Apple protocols. I don't know why talk, but that's what it is. Okay? And if you're ever taking a test and you see that type of stuff, there's a clue to you to where your answer probably ought to be. Okay. So transport layer is those. I'm going to draw lines for across here, so we'll keep it straight right there. No devices really involved in it. What it's concerned about is actually us getting the information. How's the information traveling? Okay? Not how it's addressed or anything else, just are we getting information from one end to the other? Then comes the session layer. The session layer is concerned about connections between the 2 ends. Okay? Keyword that I like on that one is secretary. And now we're working with data on this layer. Actually, we're going to work with data from here on up on these top 3 layers. Secretary, I think, is a neat word to use as a keyword for that layer. Okay? On the previous one, on the transport, flow control was a keyword for there because it's concerned about getting the data to the other end, of making sure it flows from one end to the other end. Y'all follow that? And if you ever see on a test about where about something in flow control is mentioned, and you're not sure the answer to the question, look for something about transport. It's something about that transport layer. And so usually that'll give you the right answer out of it, even though you didn't know what the right answer was from what the whole question was. They had flow control in it, and transport was one of the answers, and you didn't have any idea what anything else on it. Take a guess at transport. That'll get you the question right most of the time. Secretary here, you won't see anything about secretary on the test or whatever. But secretary is a good illustration of what happens on the session layer. The session layer is concerned with starting the session and terminating the session, okay? But making sure our session stays connected. And some things you do on the internet, in the network, whatever type, some things require you have an actual continuous connection between the 2 locations. Most things you do, you really don't have a continuous connection there. You just want to get to the connection, but you're not worried about that it stays connected. How many of you have ever used FTP, File Transfer Program? It's used to transfer your programs from one machine to another machine. Okay? If you have downloaded some music files, you've probably used FTP to do that. Okay? But if you downloaded program files ever, definitely use FTP for that. Now, FTP can be File Transfer Program, which is a program that runs the stuff, or File Transfer Protocol, which is the protocol that the program uses to do that. Okay? Now, on the session layer, where I like the secretary on it is, in real life, if two CEOs decide they want to call each other and set up to go play golf, is Susie, CEO for company AYZ, or ABCC, going to pick up the phone and call Tom at company XYZ. What's Susie going to do? Huh?
Send an email.
No. Susie wants to talk to Tom to set up that golf match. How's Susie going to do that?
To her secretary.
Uh-huh. She's going to pick up the phone, or she's going to holler out at that point to the secretary and say, call Tom for me. Right? What's the secretary going to do? The secretary's going to call the number to Tom. Is Tom going to answer the phone? Who answers the phone?
Secretary.
Tom's secretary, right? So now Tom's secretary and Susie's secretary both speak to each other. Susie's secretary tells Tom's secretary, Susie wants to talk to Tom. Tom's secretary says, okay, Tom's here. Tom's not got anything he's doing right at the moment. So I can connect you through to Tom, and then Susie can talk to Tom. So Susie's secretary says, fine. They both pass off the call at that point to Tom and Susie. They're no longer on the phone call. All they did was do the connection. And then at the end of the call, when Tom and Susie decide they do want to play golf, and that they would like to play golf at noon tomorrow, what do? They click back to transfer it back to their secretaries and go, put this on our calendar for us to play golf at XYZ golf course tomorrow afternoon. And hand it back off to them. The two secretaries speak to each other and go, yeah, it's clear on their calendar for them to play, or wait a minute, I'm going to have to call and cancel the appointment with so-and-so and so-and-so. And the calendar will be clear, and Tom and Susie can meet at the golf range tomorrow afternoon and play golf. They didn't make the call in the first place, and they actually don't terminate the call. Because if you call Susie to get a job, because your uncle knows Susie pretty well, and said, if you'll call Susie, Susie can get you a good job. You're going to get the secretary. And after Susie talks with you, because then when you tell the secretary that your uncle said call Susie, and the secretary goes, okay, I know your uncle, and Susie does, and she won't talk to you if you're saying your uncle said for you to call me. So you get to talk to Susie. Susie says, okay, after talking with you, yeah, I'd be glad to talk with you, interview with you. That's back to the secretary for each of them, set up the actual appointment time. Susie doesn't pick that up. Susie's secretary does. Same thing happens here on the session. It's concerned with making sure it can talk to the other machine and keeps the conversation connected the whole time. So if anything happens on the connection along the way on it, it gets disconnected for whatever reason. You have a surge come through, power bumped or something for some reason or something, it reconnects connection. And y'all have seen that happen. You've been working on something and it reconnects and you keep on going. Session layer handles that. Does everybody follow what session is doing now? That's all it's doing is maintaining that connection. Okay. Presentation layer works two different directions depending on which direction we're going. Remember, right now I'm sort of going up this thing, so I'll go up first. The data gets passed to the presentation layer. The presentation layer changes the data from being in whatever format it's being moved up into and gets it back into the format it needs to be understood by up there. Okay? So if it was an encrypted file that came across, it decrypts. And that's a major part of what the presentation layer does. It could have been where it had been changed some in the format of it as it sent it across. But encryption all while, okay, occurs there. So going down, if you're going to encrypt it, it gets encrypted at that spot. And encrypts it so that when it actually gets sent across, it's encrypted. It comes back up when it gets to that spot, it decrypts. It gets it back into a more normal stuff. The encoding, where it encodes it, gets it into some things for network, etc., and decodes that part out. That's on the presentation layer. So it's concerned with how's it going to be presented. Okay? How's it look? The application layer, you got to be careful on that name. That's not where your application is. That's where the network stuff communicates with your application. That's where the actual communications between the networking type stuff going on talks with your application. So you're sitting on Chrome. He types in for www.dwightwatt.com. Okay? Chrome passes that request to the application layer because Chrome says, I can't do anything with it right here. I got to hand it off to the network. It's something got to go across the network. When it hands it over to the networking stuff, it's handed over on the application layer. That's where it picks up. On the return part, when the page comes back, as it comes out of all this networking stuff, it's come up with the page, it's gotten up to there, and then it's passed off to Chrome in this case, and Chrome displays. But Chrome did not actually do anything through this whole model. It's been handed off to Chrome. So Chrome, or whatever application you're using, my GNTC or whatever, is coming up above here. It's not on this layer. This layer is talking to your actual application or your program. Does everybody follow on that part? So don't put the application on the application layer, which the name of it sounds like that. Most of you probably thought that when you saw it start with. It's not, the application's not there. That's where it talks with the application. That's the way it actually does the talking back and forth with the application. Everybody follow on that part now? Questions on that? Now, let's come back over to this piece right here and talk about it. And about going through these. But it's easier to describe to you going down than going up. And since everything else I was going up on, I really didn't want to pause on that one. When we're going to send stuff, you've got data that you're going to send. Okay, so you've transferred data over there and you want to get sent across the network. Here on layer 4 on the transport layer, it takes that data, and that data may be bigger than what we can send on the network. There's a limit to the size of what you send across the network. You don't send things so big. Like we said, if you want to ship it by tractor trailer in the real world, it can't be any bigger than 53 feet long. If you're not sure about where the 53 feet comes from, just look at the back of the tractor of of trailers on trailers and a bunch of them take on the back of them. The trailer's 53 feet long. Or 70 inches if we're going to ship it by post office, right? Okay? So in those cases, we have to tear it apart, right? Got to do the same thing here. That occurs on the transport flare. It numbers each one of those segments. And that's all it does is just breaks it apart and puts a number on it. So then it knows when it gets to the other end, it comes back up to the transport flare. It takes all of those segments that's all coming in, makes sure it's got them all, and puts them all back together. Okay? And then, lo and behold, he gets my whole web page. Segments are passed down to the network layer. The network layer creates packets. It takes that segment and encapsulates it into a packet. What it does, the biggest thing it does is it puts a logical address onto that packet, actually two logical addresses. It tells us where is it going to ultimately. Okay? And that's sort of like when we put the package on it, really, and put on it that physical, and put on it Aunt Susie on that package. Okay? We've labeled where it's going to. And you should have put on that label also what? Who did it come from? So it's always going to put on here on the packet the IP address where it's going ultimately to, and the IP address where it came from. Y'all follow on that? And it's going to put some other stuff on there too, we'll find out later, but that's the big thing it's going to put on, is it's just encapsulating that segment with those addresses on it and puts it together. Down here on layer 2, it creates a frame. It takes that packet, adds to it the MAC address of the machine that we're on at that point, and the next machine it's going to. Okay? Not the last machine, unless we're down at the very end. It's just what's the MAC address of the next machine it's going to go to, and the MAC address it's leaving from right now. Guess what? It can now trace its way all the way through the network as it travels. Okay? And y'all can put a command in the computer and trace things and see what all they pass through going along the way. That's why. So it puts those MAC addresses on there. It has encapsulated the packet into that frame. The packet has encapsulated the segment in it, which is a piece of the data, or maybe all of the data, depending on the size. Everybody follow on that? Then when it gets down to this layer, it doesn't even look at the fact it's in a frame. It's just sending it bit by bit across frame after frame. And it's not paying any attention to anything about what's in there. So everybody follow on that? Now, last thing in here, what is that? And we'll be pushing right up there to 2:30. Or past what we got on the schedule anyway. Is the TCP/IP model. I told you the two are closely related. They both have the same type of logic to them, except TCP/IP did it in 4 layers instead of 7 layers. So you have some people look at stuff in terms of TCP/IP, and other people look at it in terms of OSI. OSI is the one that's most commonly referenced out there. And if you know the OSI one, you're in pretty good shape on the other one. It's doing the same type of things. It's only 4 layers though. Its top layer is the application. However, that top layer there corresponds to the top 3 layers of OSI. And if you notice, top 3 layers here, they work with the data. It was just doing stuff with the data, not really anything about how we're doing so much out there. So they put it all in one layer, called application. Okay? But application here includes more than just application there. It's the other two and two. The next one is actually the simplest one of the three. It's transport. It works the same way, both sides. But it doesn't care which one you're looking at. If you're talking about the transport layer, the transport layer is the transport layer. The next one will be the internet layer. Actually, the internet work layer. Although you'll see it as the internet layer also. Okay. And I've got this internet over there. So, internet's probably the better term on it, but internet's gotten to where people are thinking about just the internet out there and not in terms of any. This is looking at we're connecting networks together, so that's between networks. Okay. But this is probably a little bit older term to it, but either way, internet or internet work will be okay. Okay. That matches to the network layer. Okay. Which is where I sort of like internetwork in the name of it instead of just internet. It makes it more clear on. The next one is the one that gets confusing. Because it's the bottom two layers, and it is the network layer. So the network layer does not match the network layer. Y'all follow that? Okay. They're thinking on this one when they name their stuff. This is internet because this is stuff dealing between networks. Okay, which is what the network, as they named it here, was intending that. This is stuff dealing networks. And then they call this one network because their thinking on this one, as they did it, was this is stuff within your network. This is inside your network, not outside your network. It's like here where we're talking about frames. That's just getting, if it went from his PC, that's getting to the switch where we're still inside the network. That's all his machine was concerned about addressing it to, was to get to the switch. And then the switch went to the router. So we're still inside the network. Well, then when we go from router to router, well, that's actually a network between the two, so we're still in a network. So this is the network layer, okay? That's the 4 layers of TCP/IP. My mnemonic for it, which is dropped off the bottom of the screen, and I slid this across on this other screen, so trying to get it to move wasn't easy. Isn't easy for me to do over there because I can't see it easy right there. It's right below there, so if you're looking at it on your screen, you see the other one. But the mnemonic I have for that one actually works from top down. This one works from bottom up, okay? I've never seen in any books or anything a mnemonic for TCP/IP, which always frustrates me. When I took this course to be an instructor, our instructor told us he had come up with one that he used. Well, the only problem was it had his name in it. Well, y'all don't know him, so that doesn't help you any. It made sense to all of us, and it made sense to any students of his, that we're all sitting there going, there's got to be something else you can do. And the others are going, they can't figure anything out. I'm sitting there and I'm going, wait a minute, I know one we can use. After he had come up with his, because actually I just changed 2 of the words. The one I came up with is A, the letter A to the word A. That's real hard. Teacher, for the T, is, with the I, nuts, for the last one. His actually was Art Tucker is nuts. Well, y'all don't know Art Tucker. I haven't seen him in 20 years, or 19 years. But we all bought into that one when he told us that one. And when I did A Teacher is Nuts, I went, that makes sense. All of you have had some teacher somewhere along the way that you can remember that one from. Okay? And it may be me. I'm not going to say it couldn't be. Okay? You may have decided already, or some of you have already had it before, that I'm nuts. That's okay if that's where you remember it from. Okay? Just remember, I do your final grade, so be careful how you tell me that's what you decided. Okay? But a teacher is nuts. We've all had teachers that at good point, they've got to be nuts with the way they behaved, or they dressed, or they something. Okay? But you just, everybody in the class agreed on it. Okay? I remember back in the mid-'80s, I had an instructor that he still wore leisure suits to class every time he came to class. That was a mid-'70s thing. Okay? That was polyester, bright colored suits that had no tie, and some polyester shirt that was bright colored also. And he wore one to class every time, and we were into like '84. Those things went out of style like 1980. When Jimmy Carter lost re-election, that was the end of the argument. If you go back and find some pictures of Jimmy Carter when he was president, you'll actually see him wearing a leisure suit. If you also go back and find pictures of PGs from back in the '80s and from the movies and stuff from Greece, if you look at the clothes people wearing in Greece, some of that was leisure suits. Okay? In case you're going, what in the world is a leisure suit? It was a thing from like '72 to probably like '77, '78. That was the end of the year. Which I say, Greece was exactly in that time period. Okay? So there's all of that on those two models. Okay? Protocols, just for your information, that's just for small programs that tell it how to do certain things across the network. FTP, we know. HTTP, y'all have all used and probably use today right here in your class, because that's what you use to go get to websites on. That's the protocol that delivers websites. HTTPS, secure HTTP, which is when you get a secure website where you can put your checking account in or whatever. And then FTP I told you about. TCP is one that is used to send the stuff across. IP is sending it across, but it's dealing with the IP addresses and more localized stuff. So, but we're going to look at them. Y'all are going to learn probably about 10 to 20 of them, but there's thousands of protocols out there. Okay? Any questions on all of that? But I have run out of time. But that there is probably the biggest thing for you to get out chapter 3. That's also, to me, one of the big 3 items for y'all to get in this course. Okay? Is these models. Number systems and IP addressing is going to be another one. And the course and protocols will actually be the 3rd one. For the rest of the book, or the course, we'll be basically following along this model. We're going to talk about physical stuff next in the book. And we're going to spend, probably in this book, and I really haven't looked exactly on what module is what module, but I know it's the same general order. In the old book, we had 11 chapters. We spent basically 1 to 2 chapters on a layer, although the top 3 layers usually get combined into just 1 to 2 chapters combined. So that's where it's like over here. So we'll spend 1 or 2 chapters, and here we'll probably spend 2 to 3 modules on each of these layers. This one, I can assure you, we'll spend at least 3 modules on it, maybe 4 modules. In previous versions of the book, we spent 2 to 3 chapters on the network layer. Okay? But it's actually going to follow what you're going to learn from here on through the course is going to be following this model right up the line. So by the time you finish the course, you're going to know these two models. At this point, you need to know the generality of what the models are. You're going to learn the details as you go. Everybody follow on that? So at that point, I'm going to let you go. And then I will see you on Tuesday. Just as a reminder to you, Monday is a holiday. The school will be closed. If you want to come and sit out in the parking lot by yourself, you can. But there will be nobody else around. And same thing will go for the Career Academy. It'll be closed over there too, unless they got something special they're working on. There'll be nobody here. And if you have not given me the form, get those forms to me on that. Okay? Again, I don't have to have them in meeting. Huh?
What forms are those?
That's the permission form for me to put your grade stuff out of the system. And that's sitting in module 1.
Okay.
Okay? All I need on there is your name, the date, and then your signature on it. Okay? All right. Jill don't have to look at what I wrote up here on the trace. She'll get to listen to me talk this for next month. I'm going to train instructors next month on one Monday at lunchtime internationally about what I just told y'all.